Mrs. Drama and I work at Harmon High School together.
Wonderful. I saw that I'm unmuted. That's why you couldn't hear me.
Yep. So glad you were able to get on. And yeah, Ms. Drama, I agreed a lot. I loved what you said earlier in the town hall about having student voice be the center of that.
Yeah.
And that's why in our morning session, we wanted to make sure that we highlighted some student voices and some parent voices. And I think that that's extremely important as we move forward, because our students are the ones who have ownership and it affects them the most.
Exactly. And the thing is, I mean, and I'm sure you have already got that chance to just sit and listen to them. They do have good ideas too, you know.
Absolutely.
Some of them have very good ideas. And I like also what I think Miss Sandefur was saying, because also she was like really advocating for let's listen to them, especially those high school, because they are mature enough to come up with feasible, you know, and good ideas. So
absolutely. And that, you know, all of the 5 breakouts really are and do focus and have students at the center. And I believe that discipline redesign is absolutely one of those that follows students not only during their time at school, but throughout the rest of their life, and how they process a lot of things and how things affect them. So
yeah, that's true. You know, it's and the way I see it is like, for example, just take our place as teachers, you know. Okay, maybe they don't take our input most of the time, but how do, like, the way that we feel like we just come, let's say, to school, and then here are everything made for us, and say now you follow this without asking our input. How do we feel about it, you know?
absolutely. Yeah, I mean, and it all goes back to, right, there were all these structures that were put into place to benefit certain folks, and most of the folks look like me. And so how does someone who doesn't look like me navigate a world that was specifically designed to keep someone who looks like me in power?
Exactly. And I think somebody also said it at one of these meetings. It's like at the some peak, okay, where they make the decision, you know. It's not people that we are seeing now, let's say the majority of them, you know, that come to school. They are not represented there, okay? Like you said, people like you are there at the summit making decisions that affect people whose majority is not you, and they have no idea, for example, what they go through, what their parents go through, and they just assume that, okay, they're like us, which in a way is, but also you have to look at the economical, you know, impact and the social impact. It's not the same, you know.
Yep, absolutely. And that's why, great segue. I think what we're going to do is kick it off. I'm going to share my story of why I became interested in school to prison pipeline and a discipline redesign. And then I will also have my friend Lisa also explain how she has been affected by that, coming from a parent perspective. So we have a couple different ways in which we got to this. Because you're right, Mrs. Drame, like, you don't realize how someone else experiences it until you see it or you experience it yourself.
Yeah.
And this whole topic is something that I had no idea even existed before I came to KCK Public Schools. Yeah. So I'm going to share a little of my story. Lisa will share hers. We'll talk about, you know, some basics of what this looks like, some of the work that we've already done, some of the work that we want to do, and we really want you all's input to kind of refine some of this, so that when we, you know, deliver more of this in the fall, that it's a more complete picture of what discipline redesign looks like.
Yeah, that would be a great idea. That would be good. That would be good.
Yeah, so I'll go ahead and start. My name is Kevin Kinsella. I'm an English and social studies teacher, debate and forensics coach, and Race Project KC sponsor at JC Harmon High School in Kansas City, Kansas. And I've not always been in Kansas City, Kansas. I was raised in Blue Valley, and prior to coming to KCK, I worked in Olathe. And when I came to KCK, I had never worked at and never been to a school that had metal detectors. So one of the very first ways that I experienced my new place of being was seeing a metal detector and wondering why it was there. So then it was that, and then so many different things that I saw were examples of what I didn't know. And I started just Googling metal detectors in school, why? And then that led me to school to prison pipeline. And then I would look at all these different things, including block scheduling, including containing students to, the cafeteria before class starts and teachers not allowing them to come into their class. So I saw all these examples of mistrust or distrust from high levels on down that I had never experienced before in my life as a student or as an educator. So that's what led me to Race Project KC and then doing some work with School to Prison Pipeline. So that's been my journey. And since then, I've started speaking about this and trying to learn as much as I can and trying to amplify, advocate, and being in a place where I can advocate for my students and honestly for myself and other staff members who see this and see all the distrust, really, because I think that it boils down to that. It boils down to certain people in power not trusting others who look a certain way or were born in a certain zip code, kind of the accident by birth that Barack Obama talks about. There's a disconnect there. I never felt that growing up. And with Race Project, we will go out to suburban schools where there are no metal detectors, where there is a lot more freedom throughout the day. So I know that it's different. And something else that was highlighted is that neither kiddos knew that it was different, right? So my Harmon kiddos assumed all schools looked like theirs. Shawnee Mission East, who we were paired with, assumed that all schools were like theirs with more freedom and no metal detectors. That's not only true for students, but that was true for me at the age of 35 coming in and not knowing that that was the reality for so many folks because I hadn't been exposed to that. So I think, but people who had always been in KCKPS, they didn't even think about that. It wasn't on their radar to think, oh, maybe we shouldn't have metal detectors, or block scheduling is utilized to keep students in classrooms longer so that they're not as disruptive in the hall. I thought it was for, getting them prepared for college level classes. That's how it was sold to me when I went to Blue Valley High School. And I was like, oh, that makes sense. That makes perfect sense that we're getting ready for that. And then I talked to my buddy who had worked at Harmon for years, and he goes, no, that's not why we do this. It's to minimize those disruptions. And my mind was just blown, and restriction to bathrooms and so many different things that I never would have thought of, and lack of access to, lawyers and the ACLU and knowing your rights and really stifling student voice I had never experienced before. So that's me, a little long-winded story kind of going off, but I would love you all to hear Lisa's story. So when Lisa and I met, we sat down and had this awesome conversation. And I got this great, perspective from her that I hadn't thought about either, because I'm not a parent and Lisa is a parent. So I'll go ahead and turn it over to Lisa and let her tell you her story.
Thanks, Kevin, and good afternoon to everyone. I'm just honored to be here and to have this platform to share just my experience, both just as an educator and as a parent. So I've been in education now 27 years. I've been a teacher. I've been a program specialist. I was a counselor for many years before moving to my current position, the Director of Student Services. And I just share that to give context to my journey. I was born and raised in Wyandotte County. I graduated from Schlegel, directly across the street from where I'm currently working. And I have many responsibilities, but the one that obviously I'm most passionate about is really being a voice for what is fair and just for our students. I was a student, a product of KCK. And my mother, my parent, was one of the parents that came to student services to ask for a permit and probably voice many concerns or complaints, advocating for her own daughter and son as a single parent. And now that's my very job. So I find it unique to be in this position. And one of my responsibilities is the code of conduct, right? So when I started in this position in 2010, the code of conduct was very punitive. It was a short, very thin booklet that really was only a product of how you respond to consequences, right? How you respond and impose all these consequences. And then it really evolved into this, now what you see if you're in a district, this thick document. And my passion has been about not just letting it be a response to a violation of our district, but there's character traits in it. I've been working a long time around our trauma sensitive and resilient schools initiative. So including that language that we really work on the opposite end of intervention before we get to the suspension. So that school to prison pipeline, thing that is important for us to speak about and really engage youth and our parents and staff in this process. So I read a book that really started to shift how we began to think about the code of conduct, and my experiences as a parent contributed to that. I read Do You Know Enough About Me to Teach Me by Dr. Stephen Peters, which is an amazing book because it really resonated with me this morning when I was thinking about Jalen and Vanessa talking about if we're going to really truly shift and have this whole paradigm shift, then we have to think about including our youth and hearing their voices, affirming them and acknowledging them, right? We just can't keep doing what we've been doing because it stifles them. And my heart really ached for Jalen, right? That's why he's no longer in public education, which is why I even entered. We have the power to help make the best experience for students in education or really to diminish their spirit. Thankfully, that didn't happen for Jalen. But from a parent's perspective, when I think about the code of conduct and my journey and really trying to change this into a teaching, a book that really teaches how we respond to situations for adults, right? Because kids are going to be who they are. We're not going to change that their brain is still developing, that they're impulsive, that they're excited, that they do things just really out of curiosity and this whole journey of growth. So my son played basketball. And as Kevin talked about his experience in his previous school district before entering into KCK, which I'm so glad he's here with us and he's a voice for our youth. My son had to play Wyandotte High School. And I didn't think much of it. That Wyandotte our largest high school, so his high school didn't always play, a school in KCK. So the entire time I've been going to his, now that he's in high school, going to his basketball games in Shawnee Mission, I didn't have to ever enter into the gym through a metal detector. Parents were welcomed. It was just this amazing experience. So my son's really happy. He's like, Mom, meet me right after work. We're going to be at Wyandotte. Well, I worked a little bit late. It doesn't dawn on me that I should leave early, meet my husband there. And there's this long line outside of Wyandotte. And I was like, gosh, this is really going to be an exciting game. I don't understand why there's this line. And since I was entering as a parent and not someone that was already on the other side as an employee, I haven't really had that experience. So it's not like I didn't know what I was about to share with you didn't exist. I wasn't oblivious, but I meet my husband online. I'm like, gosh, we're going to miss him starting the game. Like, I can't believe this. Like, I don't understand why there's this long line. So my husband doesn't say anything. He goes, well, let's just wait and, we'll just get in when we get in. Well, it dawns on me as we get to about 3 or 4 people closer to the entryway that the delay is we have to be wanded. They're going to check our bags before we can even pay. And I start to really feel uncomfortable. I'm like, I can't believe this is why we're late into the game. So as I get closer and I'm approaching, I notice the demeanor of our security staff and this adults. They're stressed. They're frustrated. People are trying to get into the game. I don't feel welcomed. I started immediately thinking about my experience at my son's school and the other schools that we had, have visited, when they were away games. So I get there and I don't recognize the employees that are working extra duty, because I'm an employee of the district. I don't have my badge on. I left it in the car. I don't think about it to tell them like, oh, I'm an employee, because I think, well, if I'm getting treated like that, that's how every parent feels right now. So I get in there and I have my bag, and they're like, immediately they're very abrupt. Open your bag. We need to look in it. And now I'm defensive. And I thought, oh my goodness. And I said, well, I just have water in there. And our interaction was not the most positive experience. And I said to my husband, I said, no wonder I get so many complaints and frustration, because the angst, I'm just trying to get in here to see my son. I'm greeted with frustrated, probably exhausted. I try to give everyone the benefit of the doubt. I get it. They're tired. And it doesn't feel like, as Vanessa described, it felt like, you know, I was entering into this kind of jail or whatever to see my kid, because it didn't feel like this warm, happy basketball game that I'd been going to all the other years he'd been playing. And I shared that with Kevin because it was devastating. And I did miss the beginning of his game. And of course he asked why. And I said, we had to go to the metal detectors. And my son was like, yeah, Mom, why do they even have those at your schools? And I said, I don't know that I really have a rationale for, I think that people think it's, but what it created was additional hostility from parents who were equally just like, why are you treating us like this to get into this game? And it was devastating. And it made me think differently about when parents come in, when as an employee, I might have said, well, that's in place for your safety, right? Because I've been on the other end. I'm already in the game. I don't see them standing in line when I went to a game or worked on the other side. But as a parent coming around meeting my husband to go through the front, I soon realized, yeah, that was insulting. It was embarrassing. I wasn't treated with dignity or respect. And when I shared my experience that happened, then of course the security were very apologetic the next day, but only because of who I was, right? Because I work for the district. Had I just been a parent that came to student services to see the director, no one really would have apologized to me for how that experience happened. They said, even in their apology, they were like, well, you should have just told us who you were, but I shouldn't have to. You should treat every parent coming in there with the dignity and respect that they deserve. Kids saw the interaction. I mean, you think about what's modeled by what was seen by children that were entering the game with their parents. And my husband that was with me, he's like, is this how it is at every game and every school? Like, it seemed hostile. And even though I'm like, I love my district, it's not. But that whole atmosphere, and even probably entering into school every day with a metal detector, certainly determines the type of day someone will have. And so that was my experience. And that from that point on, wanted to make sure that I'm advocating that we're listening to the parents and the students' experience. Every parent wants the best experience for their son or daughter. And we know that students are going to make mistakes as they're learning and figuring out who they are, early childhood through 12th grade. And why don't we spend that time, as our youth said to us this morning, figuring out what happened? And that's really that whole, discipline redesign. Why don't we ask our youth, well, what happened, as opposed to what's wrong with you? Well, why are you frustrated, or why are you irritated? Or because we haven't had to enter through their same lens or experiences that maybe our parents and our students have. So while that experience was not the best, had I not had it, I might have still been operating on the lens of an employee and thinking, well, that's in place for your safety. Things can happen at the game, but that's anywhere. And I'm grateful for that experience, because I now can really understand how parents are so frustrated and don't feel welcomed at times, even though our staff do an amazing job and teachers are amazing, may miss that whole kind of experience if they've yet to experience it themselves. It becomes a barrier. So that's my story. I have many more I'm sure I could share, but it certainly changed the trajectory about how I advocate for students and think about even our code of conduct, and try to focus on what it can be, as opposed to just this punitive document about catching kids, being bad, or just saying the only option is to just suspend them when really they want to be at school. So I hope that helps, Kevin. I hope that was.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what I think is the most powerful thing about any movement, any way that things will change. They have to be stories. They have to be localized, personalized. Otherwise, you can always, think about institutionalized racism and segregation. That's over there. Those things don't affect me. So why would I care that that's even happening?
Mhm.
And then you have a strange thing. I was at a BLM march the other day with some students from Harmon, and I said, this is a great start, but I need to use my, sphere of influence within the schools and try to change things like getting metal detectors out. And a parent that I was walking with from KCK who went to school in KCK, she goes, oh, no, you can't do that, can you? And I go, yeah. And I pointed, we were walking right next to Shiny Machiniste, and I pointed and I said, there's no metal detectors there. So why couldn't we? And so it came from an interesting place. One, not knowing that it was a possibility, and two, not knowing that one person could be a part of that change. Because for so long, if you grow up where you're conditioned that you don't have any power, it is always folks that look like me making those decisions for you, not with your best interest, in mind, but to keep me elevated and to keep you in your place. I mean, that's what it's really about. So yeah, so I think all those stories, and that's what I want to know. And so from this session today, I was going to define and talk about how it's problematic, but I feel like if you're here, you know that.
Right.
And I want to hear from you, either experiences that you've had, experiences you didn't know about, anything that could potentially help us move forward. I want to spend some time doing that, and different experiences that y'all have had. And then I would love to kind of hear what you would like from us moving forward. If it's, hey, Kevin, Lisa, Tyler, can you provide more data points and present those to the district? Yes. Or can you collect all of these stories and somehow put those together and then present that to the board or to whomever makes these, decisions that affect so many lives for the rest of their life. So I would love to spend some time right now kind of focusing on some stories, loving to hear from you, getting to know you all. And then I would like to kind of focus on, hey, where can we move forward with this? And we will compile everything we've heard today. And then that will help to refine the work that we have later on. So does anyone want to speak about any other stories? Or Lisa, did you have anything else?
I just wanted to know is the 3 participants that are in here with us in this breakout session, are they all from KCK?
Mrs. Drame she's at Harmon with me.
Anna or Maggie, can you share where you're from?
Yeah, I just finished 6 years at St. James Academy out in Johnson County, but I am now at Park Hill South teaching.
Okay. Maggie, can you share where you're from if you don't mind?
Yeah, I'm in Olathe, Kansas, and I'm getting ready for my very first year of teaching. Awesome. Kind of a second career for me.
Wonderful. I just thought that would help give us context to our conversation. And I also just wanted to add this, when you talk about data, Kevin, I just think the reality nationally in our district, and I'll be interested to hear what's happening up north and on Olathe. For us, we have a huge disparity with the number of African-American males that are being suspended. And we talked this morning about that school to prison pipeline. And I too am interested in what the data tells us and help Kevin and I shape and determine how we're going to move forward. And I don't know if you both in your school district see that. I don't know the exact population of students served. It's different in each school, may not be quite as diverse as KCK, but are you seeing the trend even in your school district, the huge disparities of the number of students that are being suspended? And for us, it is our African-American boys and our Latino boys. I mean, we're seeing our young boys suspended much more than we are our girls, in particular our brown and black males. And so that's disturbing to me as a mother of 2 black sons, that is the trend that we're seeing. So I think that's also part of the conversation, Kevin, that we have to include.
I agree. And I also want to offer another perspective. And I like that we called this discipline redesign, right? So there are a lot of great models out there. When I was leaving Olathe, when I was at Olathe North, we were moving into something where kiddos, it was more carrot, less stick. So they were given, you know, hey, if you do X, Y, Z, you get a preferred parking spot. This, that, or the other thing. So some of those ways to incentivize folks. Also, Blue Valley, Shawnee Mission, Olathe, I think all 3 districts now have a time in the middle of the day where students get to choose where they are and what they're gonna do, and it teaches them better time management skills, also offering them freedom. So when we're looking at redesign, it doesn't always need to be like, this is bad, okay, that's bad, but now what? So that's why it's important that we have, you know, our brothers and sisters in the suburbs that are saying, hey, I've noticed that this is working, you know, so why don't you try those things? So I just kind of want to frame it in that aspect too. But yeah, Maggie, Anna, Mrs. Drame, I would love to hear from you all.
Absolutely.
Yeah, speaking from, you know, I guess my only experience is similar to Kevin's suburbs. But one element of that free block time that you mentioned, Kevin, that we had just implemented while I was where I was teaching, is that the number one thing that it encourages is actually communication with teachers, and built into that, I think, is the opportunity for relationship with students. And you mentioned also, Kevin, you said that phrase, sphere of influence. And I think as a classroom teacher, for me right now, you know, I'm in a program to move into school leadership, but for me right now, that's my sphere of influence, is right there in the classroom and building those relationships. And I think that's what, when we talk about discipline redesign, that's what should be at the root of this, is, you know, the freedom to build good relationships with people that, truthfully, you know, I'm coming from the suburbs, a Catholic school that was probably literally the least diverse school in the greater KC area. I'm a little bit nervous, and, you know, this is kind of different for me in being in a classroom with Black and Latino males, especially, who are the victims of this discipline system. And I just, yeah, I guess I'm looking for ways to be open and helping to foster good, solid relationships in that regard.
Thank you, Anna, for being vulnerable and sharing a fear. We all have it.
Yeah.
If we identify through race, ethnicity, or culture. And so thank you for being willing to say that and be transparent. I appreciate and respect that.
Yes, I wanted to come in also make some contribution. You were just mentioning the fact that when you come to discipline, most of the kids, for example, being disciplined are like males, black male or Hispanic, you know. And the way I see it, it goes deeper than this, than just what you see here. The reason being, let me give a little bit of maybe some story, and then I'll come back to this. Before I became a teacher, I worked as a chemical engineer. So I was in a corporate world, you know, and I remember, for example, and I work in the suburb of New York. We were like maybe 15, 20 minutes from New York. And then we decided, okay, after work, let's, like, at that time I was much younger, let's go have some drinks, you know. Even so I don't drink, but I tag along, and we went to New York City. And all my coworkers, they were all white, you know. I was the only Black person. In fact, I don't like to say it, but of the whole company there, I was the only Black person engineer. The other Black people that you will see there was like secretaries or the mailmen. Okay. So here we are getting close to New York City, and then we came to a red light. And then I don't know if some of you are familiar with New York City, but especially at that time of what the mayor again, I forget his name. But it was those time where you will see those people hanging on the corner of the red light. And we see it here also in Kansas City, asking for money, you know. And here were some Black people there with their papers. And what they used to do is they will come clean up your windshield, and then you give them some money. Okay. So here I was with my coworkers, and as we stopped and that Black man was coming to clean, I could see the reaction of my coworkers, and I was so disturbed because it was like they were scared. It felt like this guy was coming to kill them. Oh, what we're gonna do? What we're gonna do? And for me, I wasn't scared because I just know that, okay, they just want money. They clean. If you want, you can give them money, or you don't want to. But this is not the end of the world. But they were so scared, of that black man coming there to clean, And that's why the reason I'm giving that story is what we see in the school is just the image of what happened in the real world, okay? Because when you see in the real world, go to Washington, D.C., who are making those rules for our cities, okay? Or for our state at the Washington, most of them are white people. And here they are sitting in their offices making decisions that affect life of people. They don't have no ideas of how these people live, okay? And I did experience that because in meetings or when I used to gather with them and talk, I can see, for example, how clueless they were about the life of Black people. They have, and then I was looking and then telling myself, you live in America, you live with these people, and you have no ideas how these people live, and yet you are there in Washington, D.C. making those decisions for them, And that's what translates almost everywhere in this society, And somehow, and I don't like to say, but it's still true, when you see all this movement, Black Lives Matters, now you can go deeper into it. But the thing that I retain from this is these policemen, most of them, is just a fear of the Black person. They think that the Black person, when they are faced with a Black person, oh, he's gonna kill me. So my ultimate defense is just to shoot you, And that's what translates also in our classroom, because again, let's look at our classroom. Let's look at our staff, teachers. Who consists the majority of teachers? White people. I don't like to say, but that's true. So when they see these kids also, it is the same fear. I'm not going to name them, but even at Harmon High School, I have heard one day, one teacher telling me, oh, I'm scared of these kids. And I said, why are you scared of this kid? I'm not scared. So it's the society itself. It's deeper than just what happened to school. So then these people, when they teach the kid and see the kid reacting or doing something to them, oh, I better send them to the office before they aggress me or before they beat me, something. It all comes to the fear of they have of the Black person. And it goes way, way deep, okay, from Washington, where they make rules that affect the life of Black people. I don't know what's your input in it, but that's how I see it,
Yeah, no, Mrs. Drama, I think you're exactly right. It's though a certain group of people make decisions for the rest of the people. And that's not fair, equitable. And a lot of that, I think, is because everything in this country has been created by separating us, and where we can't even create a narrative or a story where we interact. And when you don't know someone, I mean, that's, and this is what I always like to say. So, we look at the civil rights movement and we look at Black Lives Matter movement, and it seems like it's taken such a long time, right? And it has. And the reason it has, that compared to, say, like gay rights movement or marriage equality, is because pretty much everyone on the screen, every race, religion, human in human history can identify someone in their own biological family who is part of the queer community. Now, that can't be said with someone who is outside of your family. And that's prevented the movement, I think, from advancing further and creating power structures in which certain people are over there and certain people are over here, right? So with queerness, you could dress that up or dress it down almost any day, right? But like you, Mrs. Drame, you can't be white tomorrow. That's not going to happen, Right. And I think that, unfortunately, it's going to have to take more of these stories, but also more people in their spheres of influence making actual change and using some of that privilege and some of that place to be a voice for that.
Exactly. Yeah. It's like one country, but like two different lives, separate. they barely like interact, you know. And also just give you some history. For example, I'm from Senegal, West Africa, okay? I was fortunate enough that I grew up in a middle class family, but that did not separate me from the poor. In fact, my hometown, in my neighborhood, our house was the go-to house. Anybody sick, you will come to our house. My parents will be the one taking to the hospital. Anybody needing help, we come to the house. So I was in the middle class, but I interacted with the poor. I even interacted more with the poor because the way I was raised was, we're here for you. You go to our house every day, morning through night. People come all the way, you know. And I even remember in 2005, when my mom passed away and some people will come to the house and were crying. Most of the thing they were saying was, now she's gone, who's going to take care of us? And my dad said, we will continue taking care of you, you know. So we didn't see that break, that because you are in this class, you don't know about this society, this other class. And also coming from Africa, I'm raised in that belief that it takes a whole village to raise a child, you know. And for example, I don't know if you know Mr. Kinsella or not, but I'm like most of my time, besides just being in the classroom and teaching, I do a lot of phone calls to parents. I call parents and I talk to them, you know. And sometimes you come across some parents, they have no idea what's going on. You as a teacher, you are there giving them hint or leading them, telling them what to do. Because yes, there are children, I mean, they're at high school, some of them you think, okay, they can make good decisions, but the thing is, we still need to be behind them, you know, because we know more than them, okay? In fact, in my language or in my culture, we have a proverb. They say that, for example, a kid can climb, like be in a ladder, okay? Try to see what's over there. And an older person can be sitting where he is and see what's over there, meaning they have more experience. And that experience, when you have it, you have to use it to assist the kid, you know.
I know Maggie was going to share too, so I want to give her an opportunity. This hour is going by so quickly. I wish it wouldn't, but Maggie, please share. And thank you, Mrs. Rami. Thank you for sharing that powerful testimony. Maggie?
Okay, I was just going to mention that I've spent the last 5 years in an Olathe school in the alternative ed program, and the wing of the building that I was in served suspended and expelled students, and the majority of them were brown or black. But during I got my master's in education, and during my schooling, I had a project where I was learning about PBIS, positive-based intervention systems, and I was asking my colleagues and my administrators their opinion on a project that I was working on with PBIS system, and my assistant administrator never even heard of PBIS. So, wow. Kevin, it was interesting that you praised Olathe's approach to discipline, because
well, yeah, I'm going to offer a caveat on that. I'll say that for Olathe North. And a lot of that was from a specific principle that we had. And we did Boys Town restorative justice training. And
Dr. Heinen, I'll bet you.
Well, yeah, Connie started that, then it kind of went away. And then Jason Herman brought it back. And then Jason Herman also brought the idea of more carrots, privilege type things. So it's been good, especially at Olathe North, which is such a hybrid of a true neighborhood Title I school and the Distinguished Scholars School. You know, so it's a really interesting microcosm to study, and especially with behaviors and all kinds of things.
Yes. So Dr. Connie Heinen is my mentor. My last 2 years at Mill Creek were under her, and she taught me so much. And now we got an email from the Olathe Public School District over, like, right at the beginning of COVID-19 that they're adopting the PBIS system district-wide. So that was what I wanted to share. I think that this discussion today is important, and you know, if it gets glossed over somehow, then we're doing something wrong. You know, we're not making progress, and we're not making the changes in the school buildings. And I unfortunately, I think I can see that potential happening, because we have such great visions and good big ideas, but we need the leaders in the buildings that will implement the things that we're learning about.
Yeah. Absolutely agree. And I kind of want to touch on what Mrs. Drame was saying too. Harmon is 70% Latino, 20% Black, 10% white, whatever it may be. And it is disheartening, Mrs. Drame and everyone else, when you hear teachers who are choosing, a job in KCKPS, and they are actively afraid of the students that they are teaching. And I think a lot of that, because a lot of that is ingrained, right? So a lot of what my kiddos, my students are experiencing has been ingrained into them. Like when I see a kiddo in the hall and they don't know me, right? I see them in the hall and I say, "How you doing?" They didn't hear me say, "How you doing?" They heard me say, "What are you doing?" So that throws them for a loop. And I go, "Hey, no, I'm just saying, how are you? What's up? What's up? What's going on?" And they're like, "Oh," because they had been so used to being barked at by administrators or whomever their entire lives that whatever they are doing, they literally need to be on edge and they need to be defensive about that because there is no trust. There's no trust that they're doing what they should be doing. So then it becomes this internal thing, right? So no one believes that I'm doing what I should be doing, so I'm just going to do what else, right? But when you start trusting folks that they're going to do the right thing, and yeah, I mean, it can be a messy process eventually, but you have to start somewhere. So I think a lot of it for a lot of teachers, some of us, it may come natural and you just kind of jive with the place and then you're good to go, right? I was at Olathe North. I came to Harmon. My buddy who I shared a classroom with, middle of the day, he goes, "How you doing?" And I was like, "I'm good. What do you mean?" And he goes, "Oh, we've had teachers like quit midday." And I go, "Huh." And I go, "Not me." I'm like, I had actually my first day, my first year, 2, 3 years at Harmon now, I've had much fewer behavior issues inside my classroom than I ever did at Olathe North. So, that whole, so much of it, you're right. And Mrs. Drame, you're right. So much of it starts, and Anna, we're talking about the sphere of influence that I think a lot of teachers sometimes think they don't have the power to change any of that. Well, yeah, you kind of do. You have some power in how you treat folks, your policies, procedures, all that stuff within your own classroom. You have some power over that. You have some power over how you talk to folks, but a lot of people don't even know, right? So when I went to Harmon, people didn't even know that all these certain things were examples of school to prison pipeline. Something that pisses me off is I go and if I see at a high school where and these are small things, but they're all part of it, where it says boys and girls. Who the hell are these boys and girls? Well, they're of reproductive age. These are men and women, right? And so, folks are gonna behave how you treat these folks. And if you treat them like they're just prisoners in this pipeline going along, that's how those folks are gonna behave. And also we talk about preparing students for anything they wanna do, right? Well, when you put all these onerous lockdown type things, you're not preparing them for that. Saying you can't go to the bathroom here, there, the other thing. You think, I used to work at Cerner. I was a consultant at Cerner before I got into education. And I always say this too, and this may seem like a small thing for other people, but it's another thing that I like to bring up. Everyone at Harmon was calling each other Mr. and Mrs., and including my principal, calling me Mr. Kinsella. And I repeatedly told him, "Hey, please don't call me that. Please don't call me that. Please don't call me that. My name is my name, and I'd like you to honor my name, and my name is Kevin." That was the first time in my entire life that anyone had called me Mr. and then my last name. I'm on the first, I don't call Dr. Lane, that's Cindy to me, my former superintendent. It creates a distrust and it creates a gap between folks, and then you're not on the same page. So if it's like, "No, you must call me Mr. Marcos," or whatever it may be, then it creates a gap and we're no longer colleagues. We're not collaborating anymore. And you're up here and I'm down here and I better know my place. Well, I tell you this, CEOs, Mark Zuckerberg, no one calls him Mr. Zuckerberg. No one does. So it's like, what careers are we training them for? And not being able to manage their time, only having bathroom breaks at certain times. Like like working a service job where you have a break. When I worked at Cerner, I would, work on projects, and as long as I got it done, I'm cool beans, right? If I want to go to the bathroom during a meeting, you figure out when to go to the bathroom, right? So when I'm in the classroom with my students, I don't have a bathroom policy. I say, just figure it out, and I will start praising folks who figure out the best time to use the bathroom. So after I would finish like a 20-minute lecture, whatever that may be, then I would start seeing a lot of kiddos be in there, and I'm like, hey, now you have 10 minutes to work on this. And they'd be like, hey, can I use the bathroom? And I'm like, yes, you can use the bathroom right now. If Lisa and I are at a district meeting and there's a technical difficulty, right, with the slide or something, great time to go to the bathroom.
Right.
And that permeates through life. So I think if more teachers understood that, and more teachers may need some kind of structure on how to do that. I really liked, we had that Boys Town Restorative Justice training at Olathe North, and they took it extremely seriously. They paid for us to go to Omaha and get trained, and we would constantly practice with each other, with our students. Hey, this is what you did. This is why that wasn't a good choice. This is what you should have done. Let's practice that together. Kiddo gets, put out in your room. At Harmon, a lot of times teachers will kick a student out and now they're wandering the halls. And I'm like, what's happening? It's discipline goes here to there and then it doesn't loop back. So back, doing that Boys Town training, kiddo goes to the assistant principal's office, they have a conversation, and then they come back and then there's a re-entry to that classroom. Hey, Mr. Kinsella, I'm sorry, I messed up today. This is what I did. This is what I should have done. This is what I'll try to do in the future. And then, extremely important point, is that teacher to let their damn ego go, because we're adults in the room, and say, absolutely, man, come on in. Starting off with that fresh slate. I mean, if I had a dime, every time I hear a teacher pull up a rap sheet of what a kiddo did yesterday, last year, what their cousin did, what their whatever. Oh, you want to? No. Every day. And these are growing human beings whose frontal lobes aren't fully developed, and we need to learn those things, right? Like, I mean, I'll even have kiddos who, like, to get into my classroom will like bang on the door. I've had to go out before, and I'm like, hey, man, let's practice this. And they're like, what? And I'm like, no, we're going to practice. And they think I'm being, ridiculous at first, or like sarcastic. And I'm like, no, I'm not. So here, I'm going to show you how I can do it, and then I'll help you on how to do it. That's when you enter my classroom, I'd kind of like that. And they'll be like, oh, you'll literally see a light bulb click. Or I'll call a parent and say, hey, and I like to do this with attendance. The kiddo's not in my class at a given time, during that class, and there's some downtime, I go ahead and call. And I go, hey, your student isn't in class right now. And a lot of times they'll be like, I've been trying to call the school. They won't call me back. There's not an interpreter. There's yada, yada, yada. Or, oh my God, thank you so much, Mr. Kinsella, for reminding me how to do that. I'm like, yep. Anytime that, your kiddo isn't in class, make sure to call them. Mm-hmm. And having that positive attitude you know how many calls I've made? Every single time, hey, no problem. Next time, make sure to do this. And a lot of times I've just had to do it over and over again. And that's how you develop patterns. And that's how you
I think the key thing you're sharing are about relationships, right?
Yeah.
And when I was a teacher, I think that if we relinquish this idea of power, which is what has the capacity to be oppressive to people, right? And when you think about people of color, I as a Mexican American woman, I think that I really was able to relinquish that power in my classroom. And as Anna shared on things that I did not know, I was very transparent with my students. While I have Black sons, I won't ever be Black. My husband is Black, right? So our experiences are different. But in my classroom, I allowed students to be to freely express themselves. If they needed to bring a snack or chew gum, or if they needed to go to the restroom, I did not limit. No one ever tells me as an adult when to go to the restroom. Students will not abuse that. I promise. As many years as I was a teacher, and I taught in KCK, I taught in Millard Public Schools in Omaha. My teaching career started in USD 259 at Truesdale Middle School, and people would tell me that I was at True's hell. But I loved being there, and my kids were amazing. And I didn't have to, even on times where I just had 3 boys, and I am Facebook friends with them now. They were my students in 2000. They are grown men with children, now married, but they would sometimes test to see if I really was going to follow through, or was I going to get into this power struggle? And they were just being goofy to the point of just completely disrupting class. They fell on the floor. And I just said, well, when you figure out how to get it together and you can do your work, I'm going to keep moving forward. I said, as much as you're testing me, it's, doesn't seem like it's going well for you right now. I'm going to keep going. And they don't forget that, because any other time they would have been put out of class. And I just said, I'm not here I need you in class. I'm not here to find out all of the things that are fault. And what I say to adults, to what Kevin just described, even the teachers that find the way to decompress, is to point the fingers at a student, right? Because teachers need to decompress too. Teaching can be depleting. But we aren't forgiving. We don't allow grace, and we create this rap sheet. And because I am connected to discipline in our hearing officers, they talk about everything they've done from day one. And I always say to them, I hope you never need grace or forgiveness. I hope you've never turned in your lesson plans late. I hope you've never come to work and had a bad day. And you had your colleague next door where you could say, gosh, I've had a sickness in my family, or something happened. We don't ever take the time out. That's why that book, I encourage you to read Dr. Stephen's book, Dr. Stephen Peters. Do you know enough about me to teach me? What a different interaction you would have if you would say, gosh, you don't seem like yourself. Why is your hoodie on? Or why'd you put your head down? When I get parent complaints at the district office, by that time they're far escalated, right? A kid's thrown a book, pushed a chair, done all of these things. And then I find out, I'm like, well, tell me what happened from the beginning. Like, it just didn't start off explosive. It's because we didn't take the time out just to ask what happened. And it becomes this power struggle. And then kids only are going to do 3 things. I'm sure you've heard it. You've talked about PBIS. We've talked about trauma-informed community circles. They're either going to flee, fight, or freeze. And most of the time what we see in students are the whole kind of, they're defensive, they fight back, right? And that's what we identified. Someone else talked about it. Maybe it was in the dignitaries luncheon. Our students have experienced trauma. We have our adverse childhood experiences. So if we haven't learned how to cope with that, then our response is going to surface in a way, and the only way in the frontal lobe and the whole way the brain develops, which has not happened, doesn't stop growing until you're 21, especially in our young boys, you're going to respond in a way that you only know how to defend yourself. And that's why I said, even the trauma-informed work is not a program in our district. It's not about fixing kids. It's about how we respond. And if I can't respond, I hope what we're teaching adults in this trauma-sensitive initiative is that, hey, Kevin, I can't connect with this kid. I do get impatient. That's okay. I do get frustrated. Can you help me? Can we just tag out? Can you work me through this situation? Because everyone won't have the perfect relationship with a young adult, but you can find someone that does, so that your response doesn't become the trigger for the student. And then they know you're invested in them. I had students I couldn't connect with, and I was just like, you know what? I know that you connect with my colleague over here by name, or wherever I was when I was at Eisenhower. Can I get you to talk to them? You don't have to talk to me, but I just want to make sure you're connected to someone. And then what the benefit from that is that student trusted me enough to know I wasn't just going to throw them away and be done with it. I said, hey, I've had bad days too. I've been sad, or I've been angry. So I know you connect to someone. So who is it? Who do you trust in this building that you can talk to? It doesn't have to be me. I might be your trigger. You might not want to talk to a woman teacher or a Mexican teacher, or even maybe I taught reading language arts. Maybe it was the content that I taught that triggered the emotional distress because they have a gap in their education. And so you have to just think those things through. to be able to connect to our youth, because as Ms. Drame said, it's deeper than that, even though that's what the data shows us. We have to understand what's happening in our society and what is important to identify and affirm and honor where students are. I see you as a Black young adult. I see you as smart and intelligent. I honor that. You have to see students for who they are and affirm if we're truly going to do this shift, and allow them to know that we're going to hear their voice. As Kevin said earlier, the biggest mistake we can do is to do all this work and not take what the young adults shared this morning to help do some of the work that's ahead of us, and even use them as leaders and trailblazers in this work.
Yeah, absolutely. Where are we at on? Oh, wow. Okay, so I want to.
Oh my gosh, it's right at 4. I can't believe that.
So I want to honor everyone's time. That being said, yeah, so we will take a lot of the thoughts that we had here. I loved a lot of what we heard. Great to hear different perspectives. Anna, good to see you again. Haven't seen you since Paris, I think, right?
That's right. Yeah.
Okay,
Yep.
that's wild. Good to see you again
Yeah, you too.
in America. And everyone else, Maggie, thanks for your perspective. Miss Drame, love you. Love everything.
Thank you.
about
Thank you.
All right, thank you guys. I can't wait to see you again. Thank you. Thank you, Kevin.
Yeah, you too.
All
Bye.
right, bye.
Thank you.